EY says, quote, unprecedented market disruption is pushing companies to divest. Along with technological disruption, over half the firms surveyed in Europe by EY said global geopolitical uncertainty also drove sales. Paul Hammes, Global Divestiture Advisory Services Leader at EY, joins us to discuss this report and the outlook for the rest of the industry and divestments for 2017. What are those unprecedented market forces exactly?
Yeah, Carolyn, it's a great question. I think there are a couple of things going on. We've got obviously macroeconomic volatility out there. We have geopolitical uncertainty in so many markets. We have great disruption right now because of technological change. It's everywhere, and it's disrupting so many business models. And of course, we have shareholder activists, right? Shareholder activists are all over the place, driving a great deal of activity.
I just want to pick up on that point because we've seen a lot of shareholder activism in the U.S., but only recently it's reached Europe in the sense that some of the big ones like Nestle are being targeted by Third Point, obviously. Do you think that increasingly will be driving divestments? I mean, at this point, we know that Nestle was going to sell off some of its confectionery business anyways. Or do you think this is still an organic decision or one that will increasingly be driven by shareholder activism?
You know, I think there are two pieces when you think about divestments. I think there's the traditional portfolio management, to your point, Carolyn, and that's looking at things that are non-core. It's also looking at things that are underperforming and perhaps in somebody else's hands. That's one piece of it. But then you also have the shareholder activism piece. And all of our research, all of our conversations with our clients right now in Asia-Pacific and Europe lead us to believe that that's going to continue to grow, and in particular, that'll grow in EMEA and in Asia-Pacific.
At what point do the companies divest too much? We've seen a whole host of divestments when it comes to the banking sectors, when it came to oil and gas, and they were under so much pressure from factors like the oil price and profits plummeting. At what point do we see the profit drivers being cut off to the extent that we simply can't invest in these companies anymore as a shareholder?
Yeah, I think right now disruption is going to continue to drive these divestments, Carolyn. There's no question about that. And what we're seeing is companies are using the proceeds right now from their divestments to come back and invest in a lot of these digital technologies, whether it's automation, robotics, software as a service, Internet of Things. And because of that level of disruption and what technology is doing to everybody's business model, we believe that will continue.
One of the pieces of information in your report, I found that really interesting. It was fascinating. You say that in Europe, there's more pressure to sell at a certain speed rather than at the right price. Why is there so much pressure on speed in Europe? And are we seeing fire sale prices in Europe?
You know, I think that's a great question, actually, because it's a bit of a dichotomy right now between the Americas and Europe. I think in Europe you're seeing a couple of things. Number one, you've got the post-June 2016 hangover from Brexit. So there was a bit of a stagnation, right, in the market for a period of time, and I think you're seeing that market now get caught up. And I think because of that stagnation, that drove a lot of companies to perhaps make some decisions that were a bit hasty in some cases, right, to drive further activity.
Do conglomerates still work? I know that they're completely out of fashion. Most of the companies I talk to on a daily basis, they want to prune their business. They want to divest businesses that are non-core. And that begs the question, conglomerates, do they still offer value, or is it all about the sum of the parts valuation?
You know, I think conglomerates can offer value, Carolyn. I think it's a question, though, of how they define their core and how they communicate that core to their stakeholders right into the street. And I think that's really what it comes down to.
All right, Paul, thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. Paul Hammes, Global Divestiture Advisory Services Leader at EY.